Hello everyone, Caroline here. In today's video I want to share 5 cards that I created with the digital papers from the June edition of the Making Cards Papercraft Magazine. Every digital edition has a couple of digital papers at the end of each magazine, and here I'm showing you all the patterns and images available, and then you can print them out. I am using premium cardstock that's 110 pounds, and I'm usually buying this paper from Walmart. It's very affordable, and then I'm printing the images out on the paper with my inkjet printer, and they are very pretty this month. They have those cute little panda bears in different situations, and when I print them out of my printer, they're looking really good. So I'm very pleased with the quality. They also have some flowers, like little silhouettes or arrangement of flowers in a smaller size, and also 3x4 images, and then a bigger background, watercolor flowers, and then they have pattern papers. So I printed only the ones I really like, and what I did, I print them usually out in 8x8, so that gives me enough for an A2 card or even a 5x7 card. Now they also have 3 pattern papers. They are black and white, and then they have 2. They have this kind of abstract background, and one that has little flowers, and then pink and blue 2-sized scale flowers. I'm also using for my cards card bases that I created myself with leftover cardstock, and I also have a whole tray with sentiments that I stamped out and already cut out, and I will see which one will fit. So let's get started with card number 1. So for card number 1, I went with an orange card base, and I cut out this black and white pattern paper with my stitch rectangle die from My Favorite Things, and then I also cut out a yellow piece, a black piece, and took one of the smaller flower pieces and cut them out. I also used the sentiment Miss You, and I used the die to cut this out in a little label shape. So I'm using distress ink and just ink up the edges of that little label in marigold, and then I'm assembling my card. It's a pretty simple card. I'm just layering all my pieces. Here first the background, and then I'm attaching the black piece onto the yellow piece. And this cardstock is just out of my scrap box. I have a box here where I collect all the small pieces, and when I do cards, I usually go in there and see what I can use. Now, then I'm attaching with foam tape that other scalloped edge piece, and then I attach this whole thing to my card base. I'm attaching the little label on the bottom, and then I'm attaching that little panda bear that I fussy cut out on top on the Miss You. Now for embellishing, I'm using Nuvo glaze and Nuvo drops. I'm just pulled out some colors that I thought would match nicely with the pattern paper. In this case, I'm using yellow and orange, and also my favorite Nuvo drops. These are the Gold Coast. And here is the finished card. Card number 2. Okay, for card number 2, I'm using a green card base, and I'm also using this green flowered pattern that almost looks like a wallpaper. And then I'm inking up the edge with crushed olive to give it a little bit more dimension. And I am using my ruler here and my water pen, and I'm ripping that paper, black and white little dots paper with scalloped edge. And I'm using also a little scrap piece of vellum paper to soften that effect of that dotted paper, and with a little scrap piece of cardstock that I colored with distress ink, I created a little kind of pillow. I didn't want the panda bear to just sit in the air. I just wanted him grounded on something. Then I'm attaching my layer here. And I'm using that little piece of vellum and attaching it underneath my little panda here. And then I'm ripping this a little bit into shape and attaching my panda with foam tape. There was this little teacup that I attached to my vellum, and I'm also putting a little drop of liquid glue behind that little cup so I can attach the vellum properly to my card base. I'm also distress the little label that I just used one of my sentiments and cut this with my die, and this time I used just for you, and I'm attaching this on top the vellum. So, and then you can see how that vellum stands up there, and in order to correct that, I'm using my Nuvo drops, and then I'm using my liquid glue behind the Nuvo drop. I'm just putting a little drop of liquid glue to attach this. Then for embellishing, I'm using my white Nuvo drops and my green Nuvo drops. I'm using my chocolate glitter drops. I'm just putting a few little drops that looks like tea or coffee. And then I'm using my Nuvo glaze and add this to the teacup and to the pot, so it gives this shiny, almost like china effect, if you will. And here's the finished card. Card 3. For card number 3, I'm again using an orange card base, and I am using dies to cut out my layers here, and I'm also using a sentiment that I cut into 3 pieces, and I'm distressing the edge of that, and then I'm also gluing this onto that little piece of yellow paper. So I have a little frame around each word. Then I'm attaching this black and white pattern paper that I ripped into a horizontal piece. And then I'm using my distress ink in the color salmon and distress the edge of that picture with the little panda bear. And to darken up the edges even more, I'm using my antique linen and add that on top of the orange. And now I'm layering my card, adding my background with liquid glue, and then I'm adding my panda bear picture with foam tape, and I offset this a little bit so I can put the sentiment right to the left of the image. And I'm making sure I have on one side foam tape, on the other side I'm using liquid glue to make it all even. So, and then I'm using my Nuvo glaze and give the umbrella some dimension, and I also add drops of Nuvo glaze all around that little panda bear so it looks almost like rain. And I also add some gold stickles for some sparkle. And this is the finished card. Card number 4. So for this card I'm using a yellow card base, and I'm using this pretty flower background pattern paper, and again I'm distressing the edge, and this time I'm using antique linen, and I'm attaching this to my card base. And I'm cut out that panda picture with the that is riding the bike, and I am attaching this to a piece of pink, light pink cardstock. And how you can see how I cut out the balloons, but I left the white around the panda with the bike so it stands out on the background. Then I'm attaching this to my card base here, and then I'm fuzzy cut out one of the flowers, and I'm attaching it kind of behind and on top of that image. Then I'm using my sentiment and I'm adding this on top, and I secure everything with foam tape and liquid glue. And then I'm using my Nuvo glaze and add dimension to those balloons. And I'm also adding dimension to the, to the wheels of the bike and to the little baskets on the back. I'm using my stickers and add some dimension to the flowers, and also some dimension to that scarf. And here's the finished card. Card 5. So for this card I'm using again an orange card base, and I'm using a edge die to cut out my pieces, my layering pieces and my background. And I'm using this black and white dots paper, and also the flowers, and I'm distressing the edge to give this piece more dimension when I set it on the background. And then I'm adding also dimension to that little balloon. I cut off the balloon, or the picture that with the panda that hold the balloon, and then I'm attaching my layer here. And I also cut out a piece of yellow cardstock and distress the edge in yellow and attach that with foam tape. And then I'm using a piece of glue here, and I'm adding a little string of golden or copper colored twine, and I'm adding my panda bear that I fussy cut out with foam tape, and I'm distressing my sentiment. In this case I'm used "It's Your Day," sending sunshine and laughter. So here I'm attaching that balloon with foam tape, and then I'm using the twine and I'm laying it underneath the panda with the foam tape to secure it. Then I'm attaching my sentiment on the top, and I'm giving my other part of the sentiment a golden frame. I used a scrap piece of this matte gold cardstock that I have, and I'm attaching it on the bottom right in kind of a ray pattern. And then I'm using my Nuvo drops and embellish this card. And I'm using also my gold stickers. And here's the finished card. And here are all the cards again in close-up. I'm really in love with those little panda bears. They are so cute. I hope you like this video and you like my cards. I try to keep it fairly simple. And of course, I hope I see you again in my next video. Until then, please stay safe and have a wonderful day. Bye.